Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Parker here. So glad to see you back. Today's read aloud is Jack's Garden by Henry Cole, and it's all about planting a garden and the ways in which it grows throughout the spring and summer months. Let's get started and see what Jack does, and maybe these are some of the things that you've already done in your garden at home as well. This is the garden that Jack planted. Hey, there's Jack. And it looks like he's got a shovel. He has some other tools here as well. A garden hose, a watering can, and it even looks like he's got some dirt or soil. We definitely need that when we're planting a garden. This is the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. Check out what is going on inside of the soil underneath of the garden. Do you see something inside the soil? I think I see some earthworms. I even saw an animal called a mole that can sometimes live underneath your garden or underneath your grass in the soil. Take a look, he's tunneling through using his claws. These are the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. So Jack has got all different types of seeds that he's going to plant inside of his garden in the soil. Do you see him? He's there with his little shovel or trowel, and he's putting the seeds inside the soil. Did any of you get seeds to plant in your garden? I know I did. I got flower seeds, but I also got fruit and vegetable seeds as well to put in my garden in the backyard. This is the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. There's Jack, and he's ready for the rain in his rain gear. He's got his umbrella and his boots. All that rain is necessary for the garden to grow. Gardens need water, and the rain provides the water that it needs. These are the seedlings that sprouted with the rain, that wet the seeds, that fell on the soil, that made up the garden that Jack planted. Take a look. All those seeds are starting to sprout, and out are coming little tiny leaves, creating little plants in the garden called seedlings. Oh boy, I also see a robin, which is a spring bird. What's he got in his mouth? I think one of those earthworms from inside the soil. These are the plants that grew from the seedlings, that sprouted with the rain, that wet the seeds, that fell on the soil, that made up the garden that Jack planted. What's happening to our seedlings? You're right, they're getting bigger. They're starting to grow. With all that rain and that sunshine and that great soil, our plants are starting to grow. Oh yeah, I noticed something over there too. I see a garden snake, and I also see a helpful insect, a praying mantis, keeps away those pesky bugs that can chew up and destroy your plants. These are the buds that formed on the plants, that grew from the seedlings, that sprouted with the rain, that wet the seeds, that fell on the soil, that made up the garden that Jack planted. So take a look. Now that our plants have grown, something is starting to form on all of these plants. They're called buds. What do you think is going to come out of those buds? I don't know, but maybe that ladybug knows what's going to happen. Oh, wow! Take a look what came out of those buds. Flowers! These are the flowers that blossomed from the buds, that formed on the plants, that grew from the seedlings, that sprouted with the rain, that wet the seeds, that fell on the soil, that made up the garden that Jack planted. take a look at all of the beautiful colors that the flowers are that came out of the buds. I see yellow and orange, pink and purple. How neat! These are the insects. Oh, this is my favorite part of any summer garden. That sipped nectar from the flowers, that blossomed from the buds, that formed on the plants, that grew from the seedlings, that sprouted with the rain, that wet the seeds, that fell on the soil, that made up the garden, that Jack planted. So take a look. All of these different types of insects have now come to the garden to sip nectar from the different types of flowers. I see butterflies and bees and beetles, kind of like our garden, our butterfly garden at school that attracts so many different types of insects. But with those insects comes something that likes to eat them. The birds! These are the birds that chased the insects, that sipped nectar from the flowers, that blossomed from the buds, that formed on the plants, that grew from the seedlings, that sprouted with the rain, that wet the seeds, that fell on the soil, that made up the garden that Jack planted. And this is the garden that Jack planted. In full bloom in midsummer, all of his hard work has paid off. Look at how beautiful his full-grown garden looks.